The scene was dead anyway. A music scene lives, a music scene dies. The stories, however, are immortal. The scene was dead anyway is a look into the lives, communities and music scenes that helped shape an entire generation. Hello and welcome to The Scene Was Dead Anyway podcast. I'm your host Rick Walland. This is episode number 21 and today I'm delighted to be joined by the incredible drumming genius Neil Turpin. Most of you know him from Bilge Pump, a three-piece underground DIY rock band from Leeds. He's played drums for nearly 4 decades and has also appeared behind the kit in other bands like Solanki, Quack Quack, Polaris and Felix, but his main body of work is with Bilge Pump, who've been together for I believe 25 plus years. Bilge Pump have released 3 studio albums: Let Me Breathe 2002, Rupert the Sky 2008, and most recently We Love You 2019. Before we start, if you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. If you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review section. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by searching The Scene Was Dead Anyway. So welcome onto the show. Thank you so much for coming on, Neil. Honestly, it's a dream to have you on for me personally, because you know I'm a big fan of Bilge Pump and obviously a drummer myself, so a huge fan of your drumming. So if you want to just give like a little introduction about yourself and where you live and
yeah, thanks man, it's good to be here as well. Thanks for having me. I'm Neil. I'm playing Bilge Pump and a heap of other bands over the years as well. I live in Saltburn by the Sea on the northeast coast of England, which is a little coastal seaside town, Victorian sort of tourist trap these days. It's got a surf scene. That's really the main reason I live here, because I can walk down the street and jump in the sea and get on my surfboard, which is a nice treat. There's no music scene really. So that is kind of one of the cons of the place, but you know there are plenty of pros to it.
Yeah. But you're not actually from around there. I believe you're from Preston. Is that right?
That is correct.
So
yeah.
Kind of my neck of the woods. Yeah, I'm from Wigan.
Indeed,
yeah.
Yeah. You're from Wigan? Are you from Wigan?
Yeah, from Wigan. Yeah.
I was in Preston till I was 19. Used to go over to Wigan for gigs quite a bit.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it on Instagram, that like the first time I saw you was at the tavern in Wigan. Yeah, and I think you were playing with Duracell. Duracell were playing as well.
Yeah, I remember.
The little French guy. Yeah. And, I mean, I must have been about, I don't know what year it was. Do you remember what? Do you remember what year it was?
Oh man, like. It's kind of impossible really to date some gigs, you know, without sort of connecting it to some kind of landmark thing happening in the rest of my life. I struggle. So that Wigan gig, God, I don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
I think I was probably 15, 16 at the time, and just your drumming and the band just blew me away, and then I think after I came up to you and asked you, what advice, have you got any advice for me? He said, practice every day, 3 hours a day. And I was like, okay. And I did it. And here I am.
Is that what I said? 3 hours a day?
I think it was 3 hours a day. Maybe I'm making that up. But
that's good. No messing around.
I guess that's where you kind of, that was the foundation for your kind of where you are now as a drummer.
That kind of puts it in perspective, because when I was practicing so much, It would have been like the mid 90s, early 2000s, I guess. When I was deeply into like wanting to just play every day for at least 2 hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've mellowed out now with my advice. It's like just practice for like 2 hours 45 minutes.
She's shaved off 15 minutes, but so who were your kind of early influences? I mean, I guess because I know that you moved to Leeds, is that right? And then that was when you really started to kind of get involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I moved to Leeds when I was 19 with the express intention to meet people, to make bands and to put on gigs and just like put all those really cool DIY ideas into practice and, just try and make something happen, and just doing it all really naively and kind of idealistically. But yeah, I couldn't really like find people to play in a band with in Preston. So I was quite desperate to move. And I knew that Leeds had the Duchess of York, a venue, which I would go over there for gigs. So I knew stuff was happening. And it was also a good city for skateboarding. So, those two things were important to me at the time. But yeah, moving to Leeds was like the big one really for accelerating my involvement in music and being a drummer, for sure.
And I guess because I do have some of the other bands that you're in apart from Bilge Pump, Polaris.
Yeah.
And then Felix with Chris, who I had on last episode.
Yeah.
Was Polaris a precursor to Bilge, or was it sort of aligned at the same time?
Yeah, they were pretty much the same. Like for me, there was a band called Baby Harp Seal, which you might have come across, and those two bands Polaris and Baby Harp Seal started at the same time. In would have been like 1994. So those two bands were running concurrently, and Bilge Pump were in existence probably very much around the same time, but with a drum machine. And it wasn't for a couple of years. It wasn't till a couple of years later that I joined them as a drummer. So Bilge Pump ran concurrently to Baby Harp Seal and Polaris. And another significant band was Solanki as well, from around that time that I played in, which were very much Minutemen inspired band.
So just to interrupt you, sorry, Neil, there's someone called Praise the Loud on Twitter, Bristol-based person. They said, please talk about Solanki a bunch, please. So here we go. Solanki.
The ball rolling.
Yeah.
Solanki was just a three-piece in the style of the Minutemen. We wore our influences on our sleeve for that band, and made no, we didn't try and hide it. It was obvious. We kind of gave all the clues away. But it was just a band that was created to fill up a gig, the bill of a gig. So we had two bands on a gig, and we needed a third band. So we thought, oh, we'll make one, So we spent 2 weeks just making a set and rehearsing, and that became Solanki. And it turned into a fun little band, and we ended up doing a 10-inch on Flat Earth Records. And we didn't really spread our wings that far, but we played around the UK a little bit. But it was pretty much just a Leeds-based thing, and very much just for that community as well, and for ourselves more than anything else.
And so who was that with then in Solanki? Who was the?
It was a guy called Ilan on guitar, and he was also a member of Polaris initially, and he played on the first Polaris album. And it was Seth playing bass and singing, who was a member of Baby Harp Seal at the same time as well. And I played with him in another band, in another couple of bands, Snail Racing, which was 3 bass players and me on drums. Wow. And another band,
interesting.
Yeah. and and another band, Diesel versus Steam. You know, this is just turning into a big long list of band names. But
yeah, you're trying to outdo Chris Summerlin for how many bands you've been in. He's been in a few.
Yeah, I've probably been in like there was one point where I was probably playing in 6 or 7 bands at the same time. So
wow,
that's pretty nice, like immersive moment in my life for being just completely like in the music bubble.
yeah. So it's probably the right choice you made to move to Leeds then.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I credit it for really like, yeah, just broadening my whole horizon, you know, in every sense, like musically and like playing wise, and just kind of absorbing lots of different influences. And like, you'll know it yourself from playing in bands, when you play with different people, it brings out a different part of your playing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
You'll express something differently in response to whoever you're playing with. So yeah, to have that like on such a big, wide, varied scale was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so I just wanted to ask you quickly, how long have you been playing drums, and are you mostly self-taught, or did you have some formal like tuition? And
Yeah, I started when I was 10 years old, and the motivation was so I could make a band with my friends, because they were learning to play guitar. And we were all really into heavy metal at the time, and little 10-year-old metalers. So, you know, I was just like, yeah, if I play drums, we can make a band. So I just asked my mum, I told my mum I want to play drums. And so she gave me like a probation period of 3 months. And she found me a teacher and said, if you're still interested in 3 months, you know, we'll get you a drum kit.
wow, okay.
So I passed my probationary period, and then started lessons. And I had lessons for about 2 years. And it was just really kind of basic, kind of rudimentary. I remember the drum teacher just putting like Buddy Rich snare drum rudiments on a stand in front of me, and then just kind of going into the kitchen and making cups of tea. And, you know, that was his style.
That's fantastic.
So he didn't really do a great deal of teaching. He was just kind of put the book in front of you and just kind of like, you know, got frustrated when you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I was just so into playing the drums that I was just enjoying it more in my band with my friends. So when it got to a point where I just didn't understand the notation anymore, and I couldn't get it right, because my drum teacher never really explained it to me. He was just kind of like expected it to happen. And plus I probably wasn't like that sharp or quick on the uptake either. So, you know, anyway, like I missed a lesson here and there, then I missed 2, and then it just kind of totally fizzled in terms of the lessons. But I was still really into playing the drums and like, you know, playing all the time with my friends. So yeah, there was a couple of years of some lessons, but then from that point, I just taught myself.
Yeah.
And for perhaps like 10 years after that, I was just playing, wasn't really thinking about, you know, what I was doing. I couldn't say, oh yeah, this is a paradiddle or this is a flam. I was doing it, but I couldn't have defined it. But then, you know, shortly after moving to Leeds, I got really heavily into wanting to progress. And I would go to the library and find drum books, and then find books on how to read notation. And like really at a snail's pace, I learned to read drum notation. And then, you know, equally at a snail's pace, I learned how to play different styles from books. So I was doing that concurrent with playing with all these other bands as well. So having this kind of drip of new ideas that I was getting from books, as well as playing with different people, all kind of, you know, it came together really nicely.
Yeah.
But I guess I consider myself self-taught overall, because, you know, I've been playing for what, like 37 years, and
Wow.
35 of those didn't have a teacher involved. So I think I'm self-taught, really.
That's amazing. I wasn't sure how long you've been playing for, but that's quite a stretch.
Yeah, man, I'm old now.
So I guess falling into the styles of music that you ended up playing, did it sometimes would you say it kind of clashed with your traditional kind of drumming that you were learning to do, or was it just like it kind of works in this context as well? Well, I'm going to make it work anyway.
To be honest, I think because there was no money involved in any of it, so if I got involved in something, it was because I was into it.
Yeah.
So I think if someone asked me to do something, then I would weigh it up purely in terms of whether I would enjoy doing it and hearing it, and whether it was something I could be into. So I didn't really come up with anything like that would clash in terms of my tastes or what I could bring to it. And often I just like the challenge as well. Like I'd never played sort of surf rock, but a really talented bunch of friends from Leeds days had a surf rock band, and their drummer quit and they needed a drummer. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And it was just like, okay, yeah, just to step into some different shoes in terms of different drumming shoes. So I just enjoyed that variety, really.
Yeah. And would you say, I mean, have you always played the way that I kind of know you play, in that kind of fusiony style, jazzy, rocky, funk? Or, I mean, how did you start out, just like bashing the crap out of it like a metal drummer, or how did it?
Yeah, I was a metal drummer. My first band at school was a metal band. It was a thrash metal band, and we did cover versions of rock songs as well. Oh. So that's where it started. And then I got more into my drumming has just really followed the same trajectory as my music taste, I think.
Yeah.
So as my music tastes have broadened, so as my, my kind of influences as a drummer as well. So whatever I was listening to, I'd try and take a little bit of that on board. So it's just been a gradually, slowly evolving thing. I mean, there is, in terms of my own drumming, there is like a kind of line in the sand for me. And it was like before I started using my left foot hi-hat to keep time, and after. So to me, that was a kind of like a transition. I felt like, okay, now I've matured. Now I'm using my left foot hi-hat. I'm somehow more well-rounded, and like
that's interesting you say that, because that's exactly how I felt when I started to do the count on the hi-hat. It's just like it to me. It felt like it was, I had this anchor like through everything that I was doing. I had this metronome. So in a way, I was like, it just made me a much better drummer, just having that pulse,
Yeah, for sure. And I can hear it on records. I know which records I've done, which were before I started playing my left foot hi-hat, and then the ones afterwards. So there's like a line in the sand somewhere.
Yeah.
So that was like, that was a nice move in the right direction, just to get better at playing.
Absolutely. So Bilge Pump, let's go to the beginning of Bilge Pump. I didn't know about the drum machine. I mean, that must have been was it kind of like a big black kind of thing? Was it?
Yeah, you're on the right lines there. It was like a heavy pounding industrial type thing, really like dirty, fuzzy, scuzzy guitar and like distorted bass. And just a kind of very rudimentary sort of pounding drum machine.
But then you came along, and how did that come about that you joined up with Joe? And
well, I'd gone to see Bilge Pump, and I thought they were great with a drum machine. At that time in Leeds, there was a lot of gigs in pubs, in function rooms, just like small kind of DIY scene type things. So the PAs were never any good, never any monitors. So when I saw Bilge Pump, they would always struggle to be in time with the drum machine because they couldn't hear it through the PA. So
right.
it was there was all this kind of like unintended kind of drama and tension as sort of Joe was trying to stay in time with it and trying to hear it, and but yeah, so they were just a band that existed in Leeds before I got there, and I would go and see them and enjoy them, and it's such a small scene that everybody just eventually gets to know each other. But it wasn't till a couple of years later that I got involved, and that's when Joe was living in the same house. I was living in this house, like this 5-bedroom house, and it had a little box room. So you could say it was 6 bedrooms. And like Joe moved into the box room for a couple of weeks while he was looking for somewhere else to live.
Yeah.
And he stayed there for maybe 6 years or 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
So that's how, I can't remember the exact kind of moment, but it just seemed like a kind of, natural, quite a natural thing to just sort of end up being in the band. And I can't remember if I asked or if they asked. I think I might have asked because I really liked it. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to try and play like a drum machine. So that was my approach in the beginning.
So would you say you were quite straight in the way you played? Because from what I know now, like it's there's a lot of syncopation and offbeats and such. So
I think I was probably just trying to throw everything at the drums at the time. I don't think I'd learned how to refine it and hold back. I was in that kind of exciting period where like just want to play everything that I can play. And it took a while to become a little bit more tasteful and subtle, but at that time, I with Bilge Pump, I was just, my approach was to try and just play like a drum machine, really strict and straight and like robotic. That didn't last very long, and the good thing about playing in those bands in Leeds was the stuff that I got involved in, there was not much expectation that the drummer would just keep time, which is a really great way to evolve as a drummer if you've got a lot of freedom to explore and try things and just make loads of mistakes, but then figure out what works, and often in public as well. But it was just fair game.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was totally fine to do that. And when I look back on it as well, like the music that I was listening to and the music of the time as well, the drums are very present in the music in a way that they weren't in more mainstream music. So I think I was lucky in that sense, just, that I was into this kind of music that didn't have any sort of traditional kind of barrier to what a drummer should or shouldn't do, So there wasn't a great deal of restriction happening.
And in terms of like, so specifically like irregular time signatures and that, was that a deliberate thing or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was just like, at the point in time where I heard an odd time signature and like had my mind, completely baffled. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, wait, where's the one,
Yeah.
And then once I knew, okay, yeah, there's 7 beats in this bar, or there's 5 beats in this bar. And then you count in and then you figure it out. And then it just kind of like all becomes clear, and then you just hear it. So as I was hearing that in music that I was listening to, then it didn't take very long to just try and implement it myself into the bands I was playing in.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of happened simultaneously as well with especially with Polaris and with Bilge as well, like odd time signatures just became a kind of common currency, really.
They became
I don't think anybody
common.
was.
Yeah, not odd, almost like they lost the oddness.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think anybody was deliberately going out their way to write something awkward. It was like just that sense of, I've written this riff. Who cares what time signature it's in? It just sounds good like this. And often the person who wrote it maybe didn't know what time signature it was in, but that was for me to work out and then give it some pulse and make sense of it.
So
and I guess that's how I listen as well. How I listen as a drummer. It's like you got to make sense of the thing that you're accompanying and try and find something that fits.
Definitely. What is the general songwriting process in Bilge Pump? I mean, you've been together for how many years? Like 25 years? Something like that?
Yeah, at least. Yeah. I think I must have been in the band for 25 years. So that gives them a couple of years more than that in terms of how long they've been around. Songwriting process, like it can change. I mean, at one point in time when we were playing a lot together in the practice room, we would just jam, really. Just jam out some ideas and record it and settle on a bit that we liked and then, loop that. And sometimes Emlyn would go home and like create a structure out of a jam and then add lyrics. That was kind of like quite a common way for us to write stuff. Sometimes if I had some particularly good bit of drumming that I liked, I'd present that and then we could use that as a starting point. There's the occasional song where I've got like a polyrhythm going and I would, get Emlyn to play like the fours and Joe to play the threes. So that creates this polyrhythm between the rest of the band as well. So it's kind of nice to build some songs that way from the drums up.
Nice.
But more recently, Emlyn pretty much kind of just arrived with like songs which were just pretty much done, and they'd have like ukulele on them and things, and they'd be quite psychedelic. But then they'd go through this sort of Bilge Pump filter, which would add like two big muffs and like heavy drumming, and then they'd end up sounding like Bilge Pump songs.
And like so, the lyrics and the song titles, that's is that all Emlyn?
Yeah, that's Emlyn. Yeah, I mean, he's got his like completely unique approach to writing lyrics. So yeah. He's the man who's in charge of the words.
I think it's like comedic brilliance. Some of the names of the songs, like "Bastard Scaffolder" off the first, and "Thank You Very Much." I always like that one. It always starts with they say, "What's the way you start the song?"
I like your style.
Yeah, and then it's like bass comes in, boom, bass and drums are in, boof, and then it's like, I just loved. Yeah, it's that's something I always liked about the live performance as well. It felt like there was just a good, like you had a good laugh as well. It was
I think like Emlyn's lyrics and vocal style like set Bilge Pump apart quite nicely, because on the surface we could have easily just been another noise rock band with some kind of growly, aggressive kind of like incoherent singing. But I love the fact that Emlyn's just talking, pretty much just chit chat really, but these really kind of esoteric lyrics that have a lot of humor in them.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
without being kind of deliberately wacky, he just strikes a balance and kind of makes you curious. And there is a logic to it all as well, but like, you'd really probably have to ask him about that logic, but it's in there. It's not just a whole random bunch of words thrown together. But yeah, there's a lot of humor in that. I do like that. And there's humor in the music itself as well. Like we knew if we were laughing at something in the practice room that we kind of like, we'd struck gold at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So there are bits in songs that just, you know, we just find funny to play them. So yeah, there is humor in it for sure, and I'm really glad that comes across, and it doesn't detract from what we're doing, I think, because everyone can see that there's a lot of I don't know, there's a seriousness to it, but it's not like a po-faced beard stroking seriousness.
I like that.
It's kind of like, it's there, but like, you know, the presentation is definitely more lighthearted and with humor.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like you say, some of the songs are like, you're like, where's the one? It's like really technical. Obviously, your drumming, really technical, and it's like, but at the same time, you're having a laugh, and it kind of keeps it down to earth, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I find it amusing if somebody can't hear the one, you know. That's great.
Yeah, I've achieved my goal. Yeah. So, which album would you? So you've released, am I right? Three albums under Bilge Pump. Which one would you say you're most sort of proud of? Or
that's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm proud of moments on each one. I think the most recent one, We Love You, it probably sounds the best. It's the only one that we didn't record live. We tracked everything separately.
Yeah.
So I think it's just come across better that way. And there are more overdubs, and it's more considered, you know, more layers of guitar and different tones. But the drums were done in a day. The bass was done pretty much in a day, and then it just took about 5 years to do the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I quite like that one. That, you know, there are some, but then again, it's just moments. I like some songs on that album. I like some songs on the others as well. But yeah, I guess it just comes down to how we played it and how it was recorded. And I think some songs work really well on all the records. But I really couldn't choose one. I could probably make a good compilation and just have one album.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge gap in between each one. But yeah, like you said, that, you know, the latest one was done, I suppose, technically in a proper studio setting and tracked and all that. And so the other two were like live, more like, I guess, like live albums, but in a...
Yeah, we recorded them. We recorded the first one in the cellar of the house we lived in Leeds, and that would have been like, we tracked the drums, bass, guitar live, and then Emily would have done the singing, and then we pretty much recorded the second one the same way, but in a studio in Leeds. Just played it all live,
right?
And it's good. It sounds like, you know, it sounds like it, because some of the songs were just, you can hear it. We can hear us just hanging on, just about making it. And I think if we'd have taken more time, and like, if the quality control was higher, then, you know, it would sound different. But we played it like a gig with that kind of like fast, frenetic energy, and just hanging on by the skin of your teeth to some parts and changes which were like, we hadn't quite nailed yet, you know. And I can hear that in there, and it's sort of good. And I suppose that adds to the excitement.
Yeah, it's that kind of rawness, and it's not kind of contrived in any way. It's just like, you know, it is what it is. I wanted to ask you about, because I asked Tim Cedar when I had Tim Cedar on from Part Chimp about the, you know, because obviously they've been together for a long time, yourselves 25 plus years. What do you think for you has been the key to sort of you not kind of falling out, I suppose, or just going, oh, I've had enough of this, or, you know, what is the...
Yeah, I think it's just the slow burn, really. There's never been any pressure to do anything at a certain time, or, you know, to have X amount of songs written by this date, or, you know, no pressure from a label, no particular ambition to be more widely known. And and yeah, and I suppose like when we're not playing in the band together, we don't really see a great deal of each other. So
Yeah.
we don't, we don't get oversaturated.
Yeah, absolutely. But you are
And
but you are good mates though, that must be a thing, surely.
it's a strange friendship that grows from doing a band together, and especially one that you've done for so long, because the dynamics of a group on a social level are kind of fixed from the point where you begin. So it's kind of hard to change it as you go along. But so in many ways, amongst ourselves, amongst the three of us, we're not great communicators, but we manage. We're just about good enough to like make it work,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just I'm trying my best not to make this whole podcast about drumming, because obviously got a wider audience. But so with your style, I would say describe it as like a fusion between like rock, funk, and jazz, like a sort of love child of John Bonham and Buddy Rich. How would you describe your style?
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm essentially someone that just listens to the other musicians really closely and tries to accompany sensitively. And then on the other hand, I really like to explore interesting rhythms as well, and just have an openness to playing different styles of music. So, I think what you said about rock, jazz, and funk, I think that's fair enough. Like that covers a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
That covers a whole load of stuff. So I mean,
yeah,
I mean, it's a difficult one because it's kind of hard to see it from the outside, really. I think it just comes down to like, if it sounds any good to me, then that's good, and like whatever internal sort of censor or kind of editor that I've got decides whether something's worth keeping or worth playing or whatever, or like I know when something's tasteful or when it isn't. I don't know. It's really a tricky one, but yeah, it's just a mix of styles. But I think at the heart of it, like, there's a rock drummer with a jazz vocabulary and an appreciation of like good feel and good groove.
That's spot on. That sounds just like what Neil Turpin is
Okay.
definitely. Right, so probably there's one thing I wanted to the John Peel sessions.
Oh yeah,
Maid Vale in London. Bilge Pump did one of the sessions. Is that right? The 10-minute. Or am I?
We did a couple. We did the first one was the 2 Minute Men live thing.
Yeah.
Where we played for all the bands that I think there were 5 bands, and all of them had to play for as close to 10 minutes as possible.
That was it. Yeah. So, what can you tell us a bit about your experience of that, and what do you remember?
I remember, it was in Maida Vale. It was live. John Peel was behind glass in a control room, so we could see him broadcasting and we could hear his show going out live. And I remember there were a few invited guests as well, as well as the band. So there was an audience because 5 bands, 4 in each band or whatever. So there's probably like 30, 40 people in the room. And it was just, everybody was just buzzing and just excited and just like thrilled to be doing it and excited and nervous to be playing. For our part, we decided on the songs we were going to play, and while Peel was talking and just chatting and playing songs, we set up and we were ready to go. And then I just remember this big red light on the wall, you know, it kind of like, boom, it's red. And it's like, okay, you're live now.
Wow.
And then we just launched into it and just tried to play like solidly for 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I think I deliberately played the ending of a song like way faster to try and creep it, to keep it within the 10-minute zone. So you can hear on that recording that there's like the tempo just kind of goes from here to here in the end section of a song.
Wow, that's awesome.
But yeah, I didn't meet Peel. I was a bit shy, and like afterwards, when he was, you know, out of the control room and the thing was over, he just seemed to be surrounded with people, you know, this kind of clamor, and I was just like, you know, as much as I would love to say hello, I was just like, I don't want to be part of that. That crew. But I did manage to meet him just by pure chance a few years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was doing like a TV show, and he was in a record shop in Bradford, and I just happened to be in there.
Wow.
And it was just like the guy that ran the shop just said, "Do you know who that is?" And I was like, "Fuck, it's John Peel." So I did go over to him that time because he was just on his own, just browsing the records, and I just said like, "Hi, John, I really enjoy your show," and he just said, "Hi, yeah, so do I." And
great.
It was just, that was it, you know, it was just a respectful kind of like tip of the hat, and that was it.
Nice.
But Bilge Pump did do another pre-recorded Peel session at Maida Vale as well. So we went back and did that one. But the pre-records, it's just you and the engineers, and then, you know, it goes out on the show at some later date.
So did you feel it was a bit less intense, a bit more?
Yeah, we could focus on like getting the sound and getting set up and like getting a little bit of kind of warm up going down and stuff. But it was still, you know, the engineer still wanted it to be done and dusted in record time. He didn't want you faffing. So there was definitely a pressure to just get it done, go in and play it. And, you know, there wasn't much. He wasn't entertaining any kind of like, you know, if you had any mild reservations about something you played, he was just like, "Nah, it's fine."
You were just like on the conveyor belt of bands and artists coming through.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fine, because you just had to operate within that, you know, within that organization and how it works. So yeah, that's fine. You know, I guess it's once you know that that's how it goes down at Maida Vale for Peel sessions, then you can really listen to the other Peel sessions with that in mind. And you probably know that most of that stuff wasn't, you know, didn't go beyond a first or second take, which is kind of cool.
Definitely. So the last portion of this recording are the questions that I sent to you. So let's start with 3 shows that blew your mind, and that this is as a spectator fan.
Yeah. You know, all these questions are completely impossible to answer.
Give it a go, Neil.
There's just so many to choose from. It depends.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
What kind of. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Okay. But I did decide. But the first one, they're all like gigs from when I was much younger. So I guess music just had a way more powerful effect. I guess in your teens and early 20s, it's just this massive, huge, powerful thing. The first one is Lungfish.
Yeah.
The Discord Records band, and you know, I'm a great fan of that band. I think they're amazing. I love their repetition and like their cosmic lyrics and their presentation and everything. It's amazing. But yeah, when I was 18, me and friends from college, we organized a gig for them in Preston. So it was the first gig that I'd ever put on. and it was Lungfish. So this is definitely one of those, you know, big, memorable, unforgettable, life-changing gigs. Because not only was I seeing this amazing band, they were on tour with Circus Lupus as well, another Discord band. They were on tour together. So not only was I seeing these two bands, me and my mates were organizing it, and just like, we were just kids, you know, we were 18. And the whole experience was just amazing, that we made it happen, that it was a success. And then the bands were all staying with me and my friends' parents, because, you know, we all live with our parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was an experience for them as well, which, you know, at the time I didn't think anything of, but since then, and having been in their position when I'm on tour and staying at some kid's house who lives at home, then it's like, yeah, this is what it must have been like for them. So it was kind of nice, but they were all very sweet, and, you know, it was a great exchange. And yeah, the gig was a success. That we packed the place out. We had like this band Dead Wrong, who were a DIY band at the time, and then a local like death metal band called Hecatomb, who were on the bill, and they seemed to draw like a massive crowd, and a lot of which left after they played. It was that really old school kind of like, we're only here to see out our band, you know, we're supporting our friends. We're going to pay full price. We're not going to watch anything else. Yeah, it's fine. You know, I was like, that's cool. We've met the guarantee of the touring band. Like the pressure's off. You know, we can pay for the PA.
Awesome.
So yeah, that all worked out. But a really amazing, memorable thing. The next day as well, is that a few of the bands stayed at my mum's house, you know, where I lived. And I had a drum kit set up there and a little amp. And it was Asa, the guitarist from Lungfish. He asked me if I wanted to have a jam. So it's like, yep, I reckon so. So he went and got his guitar and a lead out of the van and plugged in. And then the guitarist from Circus Lupus like grabbed an amp and a guitar as well. So, you know, I was just loving it, and just having, you know, just jamming on some riffs. And Daniel Higgs, the singer of Lungfish, was just sat at the like the dining room table, just kind of like clicking his fingers.
Oh, amazing!
That experience is completely, you know, burned into my memory. Just like, it's because I was just freaking out inside, and just like, this is amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite people in my favorite bands, and here I am getting to like jam with them.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that one goes down on the list of memorable and exceptional life changes for sure.
And do you have a couple more, or should maybe?
The next one would be Mudhoney at the Manchester International. So that would have predated. The Lungfish was 1992. Mudhoney was 1989 in Manchester, and I'd heard them on John Peel. It was just kind of like, you know, I think probably before grunge was even coined. They were just kind of coming through. You know, Sub Pop was still like a really cool underground label, and yeah, we found out about the gig probably reading the NME or something, or Sounds maybe, probably Sounds. And yeah, a group, me and three others, a group of mates from school, all like 15 years old, just took the train over to Manchester. And like, now that I think about it, how on earth did we get into a gig? I don't really know. They must have had a really low bar on like age and IDs and things.
Did you have a beard at the time that kind of accentuated your age?
I mean, I've always been tall, but like, you know, but yeah, that was amazing, because the Superfuzz Big Muff was out, and I think their first album had just come out. Maybe I'm getting that confused, but that's the set anyway, because I remember it so well. So it was like all those early songs, which I love. And I'd never seen a band with like so much energy and just intensity, and like they were just going for it, you know. They were just fresh faced and like just like flinging themselves around and just playing this amazing music. And like, I guess it was my introduction to like fuzzed out guitars and like, you know, maybe a little bit of a swingy sort of drum sound as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, me and my friends were just down the front, you know, and like just loving it, just absorbed and just digging it so much. And then afterwards, we realized that we'd missed our train home. So we spent the night on Piccadilly Station till we could get the train home at like 6:15 in the morning or something.
Oh, I've done that before. Yeah.
So it's just a memorable adventure all around.
Bit of everything, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one would be seeing Elvin Jones play live. He's one of my favorite drummers. I saw him at Ronnie Scott's in Birmingham in 2001. So he would have been in his early 70s.
Wow.
And he was fronting the Elvin Jones Jazz Machine. And I think it was like a 5-piece with like bass, piano, trombone, maybe trumpet, and then Elvin. It was amazing. Like, it was all seated, just tables, very, you know, very civilized. And we had a table right at the front, and the drums were set up right at the front as well. So like, you know, there wasn't a great distance between our heads and like Elvin's bass drum. So it was just about as intimate as you could hope for.
I guess
and just to see someone like that, who's a complete legend and an innovator, just to see it close up and to see him playing with like so much sort of fire and vitality, and still like searching creatively as well. It was like inspiring, kind of beyond belief, really.
And I mean that will probably tie into one of the other questions that in fact we'll go for it because it ties in nicely to. So your top, who would say your top 3 drumming idols?
Well, yeah, Elvin Jones is definitely one of them. He's just a beautiful drummer, you know. He's just the way that he plays with time and breaks up triplets and just has this flow that it has a pulse, but you're not necessarily stating the pulse. It's sort of like he's just threading in all around the pulse, and like in such a unique and recognizable way. Like, you put a record on, you immediately know if Elvin Jones is the drummer, because he's just nailed his sound, you know. So yeah, Elvin for sure. You know, and particularly like in the John Coltrane Quartet, that era, all that stuff is just on fire. There's just some amazing footage of it that you can watch as well. There's like some amazing studio footage where like they're all wearing suits, heavy suits and shirts and ties, and like the hot studio lights are on them, and like Elvin's he's fierce, man. It's just like so much energy and strength, and like it's like steam coming off his head. It's amazing.
Yes. That's great.
It's kind of like that scene in Live as well, you know. You could kind of like, even if there wasn't actual steam coming off his head, you kind of could see that there should be.
Yeah, that energy.
Yeah, so Elvin definitely. And then I'd say it's a toss-up really between Bill Ward and John Bonham. It really is a toss-up, you know. It's really, really difficult to decide. So I'm going to have them as one choice, just, you know, if that's allowable.
I can. You're Neil Turpin. You know, I'll let you off, mate. You're a legend. So yeah.
Thanks for making that exception. Yeah. So like, yeah. I mean, Bill Ward, you know, massive influence. Love his jazziness that was like all over the first album, and like again, just like a fierce energy of playing, just like complete commitment to what he's doing. And then Bonham is like, he's kind of like that on the first album, but then it's all way more refined. But I love this. I love his sound, you know, the sound and his groove and his articulation. that's really recognizable too. You know who the drummer is when you hear it. So yeah, it's got like just heaps of personality, and you can make sense. And it's not necessarily like complex. I can go back now and make sense of what those two are playing, work it out. But that's only half the story, isn't it? It's like how you do it. It's not necessarily what you're playing, it's how you're playing it. And I just love the way that both of them are playing it, and just how creative they are, and how strong a presence the drums are in the sound, And so yeah, so then my third choice would be Joseph Modeliste from the Meters, which this kind of ties in with your earlier description. We've got rock, we've got jazz, and we've got funk. So there's these like legends representing each part of each genre. So that's cool. So yeah, Joseph Modeliste from the Meters, pure creativity, and again, really beautiful drumming and just amazing sounding drums as well. It's just kind of like, just to hear his hi-hats and just like a crack on the snare, and it's immediately recognizable. And there's a kind of like turned aroundness to what he plays. It's like, you're listening and you're like, oh, what just happened there? And it's kind of backwards to what you're used to, and it just sounds amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Just very quickly, something that I don't know what you think about the way production is these days. Do you feel like drums and the production side of it is taken away the character of like think 100 years ago, maybe like one mic little condenser or whatever's dangling in the middle of the room, and that's all they've got, and the drums just sound so like roomy and like just organic. Like I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the drums, it's everything. Like as digital recording has progressed, and I guess the methods just change the sound of the music across the board. So I think you can still get those sounds if you want them. You can get a roomy drum sound if that's what you're going for, or you can kind of go for something way more quantized and like synced up. And there seems to be a lot of music that like has this like a super tight metronomic kind of groove to it, and I think that's probably, well, it is, isn't it? It's like, it's the impact of drum machines on music that now drummers, like, we're not going to be threatened by machines. We're going to play as well as machines, and like, if not better than machines. So yeah, I think that really represents a lot of drumming these days, which impresses me. And it's not something that I really aspire to play, but it blows my mind when someone can play like super tight, like a machine like that. It does sound great. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do love the sound of old records for sure. Yeah, I mean, totally. Like simple recordings, just like those ensemblers played live, often roomy live, a lot of room for dynamics and subtlety and expression. Yeah, I love all that. But I mean, I'll still listen to, I trying to think of an example of like modern drumming that's like,
I've got
doesn't have that sound.
Songs for the Deaf, Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah, right.
Dave Grohl.
That's I mean, that's amazing in its own right, isn't it? It's like,
I think it's a masterpiece. Like his drumming is incredible on that record.
It's the way it's recorded is just so brutally dry. Didn't he record all the cymbals separately and then recorded the drums separately?
Probably. He's very kind of intense in the way he records, isn't he? I've heard, like, especially with like Foo Fighters. Apparently, he's like re-recorded at the beginning. He was like re-recording the drum parts without telling the drummer. That was before Taylor.
Oh, really?
Taylor Hawkins joined up. So
that's not going to make him feel a bit insecure. But yeah, I think I read somewhere that on that Queens of the Stone Age album, they recorded the drums and then recorded the cymbals just for that extra element of like brutal separation and dryness that it has.
Wow.
But yeah, it's so clinically like on the money, isn't it? There's nothing
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
left to chance or left in. There's no kind of like, oh, that was a good take, but I kind of scuffed it on this bit, but we'll keep it. It's kind of just seems like we're going for absolute, mechanical precision here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he is like his style is very robotic. Not robotic because that makes him sound a bit not very artistic, but like he is like a metronome. Like, that's how I. But I think he's a fantastic, amazing drummer as well in his own right.
Yeah,
so.
I see him in the category of drummer. It's like hands above the head drummer. Like.
Yeah.
like that kind of proper workout sort of drummer.
The guy from Battles, what's his name? He's got a crash cymbal that's like he has to almost stand up to hit it. I can't remember what his name is. But yeah, metronomic as well. So two more to go, and then so let's go with 3 records that change your life.
Okay, then I suppose in order it'd be the first Black Sabbath album, because it's probably the record that I've listened to more than any other record ever, because I discovered it when I was really young, like 10 or 11 years old. My stepdad had it in his collection, and me and my mates at school were like into metal, so I was like, wow, look what I found the first Black Sabbath album. And it's just totally amazing, blew my mind completely. And at that time, it's the melodies and the riffs, they're really like almost like nursery rhymes or something. They're so simple and like, immediate. So you don't need any sophistication to like it, just because it has that like childlike quality. So I loved it, on that level. And I knew that something good was happening with the drums. I didn't stand a chance of understanding it, hearing a song like The Wizard, and it's so like amazing, and like the cowbells in there and all those fills. Just like, whoa, I had no idea what was going on, but I knew that is great and sounds amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
So that album for sure, just because it's like been there the whole time, and I just revisit it, and like, it's hard to like listen to one song without listening to the whole album. So I think I have to listen to the whole thing when it's on. And, it's like the first side is really like to the point, and like the songs are like, there's no messing. And then the B-side is just like this massive sprawling, like mostly a guitar solo.
And
like,
like a prog jam.
That's cool. It's like they're just getting it all out there on the first album. And I think it only took them a day to do it as well. So it's got all this energy in it. It's classic sort of like document of a band's first album, where they've got all this vital energy that's just like, thankfully been captured really well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's one for sure. And the next one would be like, I mean, again, this is like a massively impossible.
It's hard, I know. Yeah.
Question that like omits so many other things, but I'm gonna say Double Nickels on the Dime by the Minutemen.
Okay. Yeah. Minutemen.
Because the Minutemen were a band that I discovered, I don't know, around the age of 15 on skateboard videos. And then, once I started delving into their back catalogue, I guess that album stands out because it's this like double album of, just like so many songs on there. I have no idea. But I love the drumming, love the whole thing, the bass, the guitars, singing. It's just immediate and like so much energy, and like the lyrics are great as well. And it also sounded like nothing else. And I really love that about discovering a new band, where they have their own immediately recognizable character. So, there's an authenticity that like just shines through. They're just like doing their own thing, and like they're part of this, this like hardcore scene or whatever, like that sort of 1980s West Coast hardcore scene, but like they're not remotely interested in sounding like Black Flag or any of the other bands. They're like completely unique. So yeah, they're standouts, and I still love them now. And I love the drumming. Like George Hurley was a massive influence, because you could really hear something going on that wasn't going on in other music. They were obviously like drawing on a lot of different influences beyond like the hardcore punk scene.
Absolutely.
And then yeah, for similar reasons, like Spiderland by Slint would be the next one.
Great choice.
Yeah, I'm probably not the only person to choose that, but like I couldn't ignore it, you know. It's like perhaps it's an obvious choice, but yeah, again, just total uniqueness and like an approach to music that no one else was really doing at the time. And it was this guy at college who was like a year or two older than me. He was really into music and liked a lot of really kind of interesting and obscure things. And often he'd play stuff and I'm like, nah, I don't like this, you know. I wasn't ready for it. It's just like my ear wasn't mature enough. But like he said, oh, I think you'll like Slint. And then he played a bit of Spiderland and I was like, oh, wow. So I had to go out and buy it. And yeah, of course, it's just amazing. It's so beautifully recorded and so much restraint in it as well. So much space and amazing dynamics as well.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, and the common thread throughout is like the good drumming as well.
Yeah, the drumming's amazing on that record as well. Yeah,
like super tasteful. There's nothing unnecessary in there.
Yeah.
And like, you know, all the fills because the you know, he's not like going for it the whole time. There's just like when there's a fill, and it's like, oh wow, it's got an impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a really beautiful sound. And I was amazed to like discover how young they were as well, like later on, you know, when they made that record. It's like kids, like how on earth do you do it?
There's a maturity to it, isn't there? That you would, it feels like it was ahead of its time almost, you know.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. And I mean, it became a blueprint for like so many other bands that came after as well.
Absolutely.
And nobody matched it really, you know. If you only have one post rock album, then just have that and like, you know, you're done. Like,
yeah, absolutely. So last one is free because you've been together, Bilge Pump been together for 25 plus years. This is going to be a tough one. 3 Bilge Pump gigs that you will never forget. Hopefully there'll be positive ones, not
not the ones that I wish I could forget. It's tough. Like I remember a lot of moments from gigs. So I think having played so many, they just blur together. It's like, you know, this mush, this massive just blob of gigs. So it's really just trying to pluck a few moments that stick out in my mind over the years, and like a good one, you know, and like it's just the ones that spring to mind. So there's one at the Pack Horse in Leeds. It would have been a very early one. So just playing like a, you know, full on intense little sweaty room, playing on the floor. Everyone stood up. It's, you know, just like hometown sort of small DIY gig. And like, I can't remember the song, but like, I think Joe snapped a string and somehow the string, the guitar string, like went through his finger or his thumb, like right through, like came out the other side. So he's like impaled on his guitar string.
That's grim. Yeah.
So for some reason I remember that. I remember it. So I can't remember if somebody removed it for him or if he removed it, but like that sticks in your mind.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty strong gig injury.
It's
that's one. Then a more recent one was like playing in Leeds again. We did a matinee show, which was attended by kids on a Sunday afternoon. So we deliberately kept the volume down a bit and did a little bit of crowd participation. So on the song Natural Blonde, it all comes down to feedback, and then there's a drum free-for-all. So I handed out all the sticks and beaters to this crowd of children ranging from like 4 years old to, you know, like 11 or whatever. So there was this gang of like 10 or 15 kids, all with sticks, just like thrashing away on the drums and the cymbals.
Oh, amazing.
So that, you know, that was cool. And then it was actually really hard to get them to stop to carry on the song.
That's the thing with kids, isn't it? Yeah, very hard to.
So yeah, but that was great. That was really good fun. Playing in Milton Keynes was always memorable because the locals there would always like whip their tops off and like
yes, this came up
kind of have this kind of semi-naked wrestling thing going on.
This is like the whole Don McLean action beat. Yeah. Those guys they loved to take the tops off. So that was always really memorable. And the gigs are always in like leisure centers or tennis clubs or golf clubs or it's like there's always this kind of sports angle. But there was one in like a tennis club where it perhaps was at the similar point in the song as the kids taking over the drums. But this time, like the audience, like all these topless blokes, like picked up Joe, so he was aloft, and then they picked up Emlyn, so he was aloft as well, and they were both getting passed around amongst the audience. Oh, man, but awesome. I was kind of like on my drum. I was on the floor on my drums on the drum rug. But I think there was probably, I think they were probably thinking amongst themselves, can we pick him up as well? But I think I probably like had some kind of like, psychic defense up or something, just like leave me the fuck alone. Oh, that's amazing.
So, but that was memorable. And then a recent one was playing at End of the Road Festival, which was, the biggest gig we've ever done. And in 2019 on the back of like, being discovered by Six Music. But yeah, anyway, yeah. So like, yeah, playing End of the Road was cool because it was nice to just do it on that grand scale and have a really great sound and just like experience that level of professionalism by the crew and everyone. And it was like, it was all good, there was just a good vibe to it all. And like, it was dead efficient and you were set, like minimal sound check, just kind of like total pros doing their jobs. It was really nice to see in them, in an amazing kind of state of the art PA as well. So if you're playing intricate stuff that's loud, it often just gets lost in a mush. If it's through a PA, I can't deal with it. But like, from what people said, it sounded great. And it was in a massive marquee, huge tent. And we had no idea if anyone was, thought maybe at best a handful of people might stick around, some friends who we got in on the guest list. Yeah. But like, people stuck around and people came and they stayed as well. So it was a good one. Like, it felt like, job done. These people most of the people in the room probably didn't know who we were, but we were doing something that like kept them engaged for
that's great.
35 minutes or however long we played.
Awesome. Do you know Chris Catterall he was in Narcosis and I think Mechagodzilla as well. Like, oh
right, yeah, I remember Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. So he was also in another grindcore band called Narcosis from Wigan. He has a question for you. Did anyone ever fall down that enormous hole in 120 Rats? I think it's a venue, isn't it, in Leeds? It was it was a venue.
120 Rats was a squat in Meanwood in Leeds,
right?
In the like mid-90s, and it was mainly a bunch of French guys, punk rockers, and they were in a band called Headache, and they started opening up their home, which was a squat, into a venue as well. So they'd have a makeshift bar and put bands on, and it was amazing. It was like, the coolest place in Leeds to like just do a gig or go and see a gig and hang out. It was totally great. The hole, I'm not sure about the hole. I mean, the house was like in a bit of a state of disrepair. So it might have been a hole in the ceiling on one of the, in one of the rooms. I can sort of remember a hole hole in the floor, probably on the first or second floor. I'm guessing that somebody will have fallen down it, because people definitely weren't sober very often in that place.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All I can say is, I reckon somebody probably did, but I don't have any particular anecdotes to fulfill that.
Hope you're happy, Chris. There's your answer. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Neil. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. This was a really special episode for me personally. I've seen Bilge Pump at least 7 or 8 times in my lifetime, and I consider Neil to be one of my top 3 drumming idols. The main thing that stood out for me was Neil's incredible articulation, wonderfully expressive in speech and equally so behind the kit. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and for you drummers, make sure you practice 2 hours and 45 minutes every day. Next up is Dan Brooks, lead vocalist and frontman for arguably the UK's best modern day post-punk band, Total Victory. If you haven't heard of them, check out the song Omni Victory as a starting point. If you're watching on YouTube, please could you like and subscribe to my channel to help the podcast grow. If you're listening on Apple iTunes, please could you leave a review under the ratings and review section. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by searching The Scene Was Dead Anyway. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I'm your host, Rick Walland, and you were listening to The Scene Was Dead Anyway.